Alright, I'm finally back with a new video here. Today I'm going to read from the book Vatican Assassins, but before we start that, I wanted to address a comment here on this video that I uploaded a month ago, American Jesuits, A History of Jesuitism in the United States. And this is a video by Chris Pinto. And someone asked me, Pinky Sue asked me, did America have a secret service back in 1865? Yes. And the best way to read about all of that, if you read right here in the book Vatican Assassins, this is the latest edition, chapter 26, the Jesuits from 61 to 65. So, I am not going to be reading this chapter right now. We will focus on something more recent here. As you can see, this is a very extensive book with like over 2,000 pages. To be honest, I have not read the whole book, but I have read portions of it, and today we will focus on chapter 41, the Jesuits from 62 to 65, so something more recent. Now, if you want to get this book, it's expensive to get it online because you got to buy. This is not in print, so you got to buy it through Eric John Phelps's website. But it's possible to find it online. I guess you can download it, find it cheap or whatever. It's possible if you look for it. You know, I don't know exactly where you can find it. I can't list the links, but if you Google and snoop around, you'll definitely be able to find a PDF. So what I'm going to read today is the Jesuits 1962 to 1965. Clearly, as you can see, some of these chapters have like 100 pages, which, unless you guys want me to cover it, if you enjoy these readings, I might read a little bit more, but I'm just going to read the shorter chapters just so that you can kind of see what this is about. The information is pretty accurate. Eric John Phelps is one of the best sources to go on the Jesuits. And so let's start right here with chapter 41. The Jesuits, 1962 to 65. Right here. Chapter 41. The Jesuits, 1962 to 1965. Vatican II. Cover-up of Rome's Cold War against heretics and liberals. Masonic Pope John the 23rd seeks to prematurely end Rome's Cold War. Assassination of Pope John the 23rd, replaced by Cold Warrior Pope Paul VI. Masonic master of Pope Pius XII. Vatican red lines. Assassination of JFK. If two opposed blocs, the Jesuit generals, Socialist Communist East, financed by his Socialist cartel capitalistic West, should finally succeed in settling their differences, what will become of the Vatican? Thus, the Vatican threw off its mask and openly recommended the continuance of the Cold War, pending the hot one. Vatican II began in October 1962 and it lasted until December 65. There were many surface changes to the Roman Catholic institution. The Mass would no longer be performed in Latin. Protestants were no longer called heretics, but separated brethren. And the priests' formal prayers for the perfidious Jews ceased. After the Black Pope's anti-Jew, anti-Protestant, anti-Orthodox Second 30 Years' War, the Vatican's Jesuit/Masonic masters sought to deceive the world into believing the Pope was now pro-Jew, for peace and religious liberty. But in doctrinal substance, nothing had changed. The Pope was to continue to uphold the Jesuits' bloody council of Trent. We read from the documents of Vatican II. The salient point of this council is not therefore a discussion or for an article, not of the fundamental doctrine of the Church, which has repeatedly been taught by fathers and by ancient modern theologians, and which is presumed to be well known and familiar to all. For this, a council was not necessary, but from renewed, serene, tranquil adherence to all the teaching of the Church in its entirety and preciseness as it still shines forth in the Acts of the Council of Trent and First Vatican Council, i.e. we must still kill the accursed heretics and the Pope is still infallible. The substance of the ancient doctrine of the deposit of faith is one thing, and the way in which it is presented is another. We must carry out the ancient goals of killing heretics and liberals, accursed and condemned over 100 times by the Order's Sacred Council, but in another deceptive way. In pursuing the Jesuit-ruled papacy's quest to establish an international world government under the Pope, Jesuit-making the Council advocated an end to the Cold War by calling for the end of all national sovereignties by means of universal disarmament, including the abolition of private gun ownership and the end of war in general. This ruse of war against sovereign, white Protestant nations of the West is comprehensible in light of the past, but preposterous on its face. Again we read, the total banning of war and international action for avoiding war. It is our clear duty then to strain every muscle as we work for the time when all war can be completely outlawed by international consent. This goal undoubtedly requires the establishment of some universal public authority acknowledged by all and endowed with effective power to safeguard on the behalf of all security, regard for justice, and respect for rights. Hence, everyone must labor to put an end at last to the arms race and to make a true beginning of disarmament. Pope John the 23rd followed the Jesuit general's open and future policy laid down in the council, which is identical to that of Rome's United Nations. We read, Pope John the 23rd, 1958-63, reversed the anti-communist policies of his predecessor, Pope Pius XII. He commenced dialogue with communists of Europe and signaled Soviet Russia that the Vatican would be ready to cooperate with her. He fathered the Vatican II Council and ecumenism, thus beginning Rome's open alliance with our coming invaders. But while pursuing the policy of ending the Cold War, Pope John the 23rd suddenly died of a rapidly progressing cancer, according to Gordon Thomas, an Irish journalist, as revealed in his masterpiece on Israel's Mossad, Gideon Spies, in July of 1963. And who replaced him? It was the secret Cold War-ian Vatican Red Line handler, Cardinal Montini, who became Pope Paul VI. Under Pope Paul VI, the Cold War would continue, but President Kennedy persisted in following the anti-Cold War leading of Pope John the 23rd. Therefore, like the Pope, President Kennedy also died and was replaced with another Eisenhower-Nixon-style Cold Warrior, Jesuit-advised Freemason, and servant of Cardinal Spellman, President Lyndon B. Johnson. As the Cardinal of Lorraine, in league with the Jesuits, used the military of Queen Catherine de' Medici of France to make war on the French Protestants in 1572, so would Cardinal Spellman, in league with the Jesuits, use the military and commander-in-chief of the Holy Roman American Empire to make war on the Vietnamese Buddhists in 1964. The Lion Gulf of Tonkin affair justified the bombing of Hanoi. Spelly's war was now on. The ends of Vatican politics never change, only the means. Thus, for the greater glory of God. Satan's infallible God-man who sits in St. Peter's chair, the ends justify the means. Obviously, the Society of Jesus had planned on ending the Pope's Cold War in favor of some universal public authority acknowledged by all. So in 1989, the Cold War officially ended, at least in 14th Amendment America. But why were both Pope John the 23rd and President Kennedy removed from their offices for following the Jesuit policy of disarmament as outlined in the Second Vatican Council? Because both sought to end the Cold War prematurely. The international intelligence community, the drug trade, and the Russian war machine were not yet fully developed. The hoax of the moon landing, led by occult Freemason Neil Armstrong, had not yet been perpetrated on the peoples of the world, as the true purpose of the space program was to put spy satellites into orbit, enabling Rome's united intelligence communities to monitor the actions of all the inhabitants of the earth while enforcing its evil counsel of Trent. The Order's old enemy, the white, Celtic, Anglo-Saxon, Calvinistic, Protestant, and Baptist middle-class people of the North American Empire, had not yet been amalgamated and communized or broken in their will, morale, health, and finances. 30 years of relentless war, secretly or openly, against all heretics, Protestants, and liberals, to extirpate and exterminate them from the face of the whole earth, had not yet taken its deadly toll. For many other reasons, it clearly was not time to end the Pope's Cold War. Thus, the Vatican's open but forced policy was to end the Cold War, while its secret but true policy was to continue the most successful of inquisitions in making the risen Vicar of Christ the theocratic, universal monarch of the world, enthroned in Jerusalem's rebuilt temple as the man of sin. Francis Parkman, one of America's greatest 19th century historians, sustains our conclusion. The Jesuits, then as now, were the most forcible exponents of ultramontane principles. This church to rule the world, the Pope to rule the church, the Jesuits to rule the Pope. Such was and is the simple program of the Order of Jesus, and to it they have held fast, except on a few rare occasions of misunderstanding the vice-regent of Christ. Indeed, the brave and virtuous M.F. Cusack, an ex-nun of Ireland's Kenmare Convent, who had been seduced into Romanism by the Order's wicked Oxford movement in England, who later became a Bible-believing Protestant and author of The Black Pope, which is the rarest of histories in describing this most sinister world religion to be foisted upon us by the Jesuit order, so ably concluded: the Jesuits offer the world a larger system of theology by which every law, divine and human, may be broken with impunity, and by which the very bulls of popes may be defied. It is ghastly religion. It is a religion to be abhorred of all honest and honorable men. Therefore, in November 1963, 4 months after the death of Pope John XXIII, President Kennedy also died at the hands of Vatican assassins. You have Pope John XXIII receiving Cardinal Spellman in Rome, 1958. Paying homage to the new Pope at the obeisance ceremony in the Sistine Chapel on October 30th, 1958, Spellman openly submitted to his master, but secretly opposed him, as did the Black Pope, despite the Pope's attempt to openly converse with Soviet Russia, having expelled the Russian branch of the Knights of Malta in 1917, and the Chinese, who expelled the Jesuits in 1949. The order's Cold War was to continue. Thus, John XXIII would be the victim of the poison cup, dying of an induced cancer, and Spellman would have his war in Vietnam. The Cardinal Spellman story. Freemasonic Pope Paul VI coronation in 1963. You got the Triple Crown symbolizes the power as Lord of Heaven, Earth, and Hell. Right here you got the Second Vatican Council in Rome, 1962 to 1965 and 1963. Right here, despite the open changes brought about the order, the secret maxims of the Black Pope's Traditionalist Council of Trent were continued in full force. You got the North Vietnamese Roman Catholics going south, 1955. Rome's crusade against the majority Buddhist population of Vietnam was set in motion by Cardinal Spellman's terroristic Saigon Military Mission, SMM. Created in January 1954, it was headed by CIA super agent mission of SMOM Alan W. Dulles, USAF Colonel Edward G. Lansdale. Returning from exile in a Benedictine monastery in Belgium, DM was brought to absolute power via Lansdale and a CIA-managed election in October 1955. Engineering a civil war, Spellman used Eisenhower's Secretary of the Navy Charles S. Thomas, who subsequently directed aircraft giant Lockheed Corporation to transport 660,000 Roman Catholics on Navy ships from the north to the south, from Haiphong to Saigon harbors. The pre-slides put forth to relocate these northern Catholics where they would be murdered by communists, and that the Virgin Mary had gone south. According to Secretary of State John Foster Dulles, a total of 1,100,000 were moved south by the SMM. The scheme had been conceived not in Vietnam, but simultaneously at Washington and the Vatican. It was the brainchild of Cardinal Spellman of Pius XII, with two Dulles brothers, DM, and certain American military elements. With the Catholics now in the south, the bombing of the Buddhist north began when Vatican II terminated 1965. Right here we got the Masonic President Lyndon B. Johnson serving Masonic Pope Paul VI, Governor of the World, 1965. President Lyndon Johnson at the funeral of his American master, Knight of Columbus, Francis Cardinal Spellman, 1967. LBJ was a High Mason, CFR member, and former student, Jesuit Georgetown Law School. While visiting his Texas ranch, he at times attended the Pope's St. Francis Xavier Church in Stonewall, Texas. Its pastor, Father Unibald W. Schneider, was his best friend, having considered becoming a Romanist for several years, as foretold by CFR-controlled columnist Drew Pearson. Before his death, Spellman Strader was secretly baptized into the Pope's Roman Catholic Church. His daughter Lucy had previously been an open convert to Romanism. Jesuit Matteo Ricci, father of Communist China. The order's 16th century's conspiracy was to first conquer Japan and then China, failing for over 200 years. The order finally conquered Japan in 1868. Emperor Meiji to build an empire serving as the sword of the church during World War II. Using its American sword of the church, Japan was submitted to the rule of the Black Pope in 1945, as was China in 1949. Though Chairman Mao openly expelled the order in 1949, the Jesuits secretly were Communist China's masters, using the American empire to both erect and support the order's inquisition in the Far East. Since the end of the Cold War, the U.S. has given high technology to Red China, preparing her for America's Sino invasion. The senior honorary advisor for China's COSCO is SMOM Alexander Haig. We're going to take a look at another short chapter here, chapter 45, the Jesuits in 1963, the FBI, the Secret Service, and the Jesuit. Let proper methods be used to get knowledge of the animosities that arise among great men, that we may have a finger in reconciling their differences. For by this means we shall gradually become acquainted with their friends and secret affairs, and of a necessity engage one of the parties in our interests. Ignatius Loyola, 1540. Whoever wishes in this society, which we desire should be distinguished by the name of Jesus, formerly known as the Knights of the Black Virgin Mary, to fight as a soldier of God under the banner of the cross, and to serve only the Lord and his bride, the church under the Roman Pope, the earthly vicar of Christ, after taking the solemn vow of eternal chastity, poverty, and obedience, must also render service in reconciling quarrels, in all likelihood that we have caused. Emphasis added. Again, Ignatius Loyola, 1540, was your first black pope. The Society of Jesus, functioning as a devil's army in reducing all nations to the will of the Pope, is the undisputed master of coordinated assassination around the globe for the last 463 years, 1534 to 2007. In command of its Masonic invisible empire, none can escape its designs unless they are providentially protected by the risen Son of God sitting at his Father's right hand. With the assassination of President Kennedy, as in all well-laid plans of mice and men, there were few glitches or difficulties that arose. One such difficulty was a hostility having arisen between the less informed agents of the FBI and Secret Service. Each blamed the other as being responsible for the president's death. Hoover and Deloach of the FBI, Rowley, Greer, Kellerman, Hill, and Hickey of the Secret Service knew quite well who killed the president, but the lower ranks, not in the know, were quarreling. To resolve this dilemma, as per the maxims of the Jesuit order, Spellman would use best friends, Cartha D. Deloach and James J. Rowley, both of whom were Roman Catholics and powerful Knights of Malta. Cardinal Spellman's agent and Knight of Malta, Cartha Deloach, gives us a most fascinating narration of how the quarrel was resolved. Assistant Director and Third in Command of the FBI, Knight of Malta, D. Deloach, tells us in his cover-up work, Hoover's FBI in 97, of the absolute power the Jesuit order wields over the American Empire's most renowned police agencies. He writes, "It was a bad time to quarrel. The nation needed to believe that the President of the United States was safe while driving down the streets of America. As the quarrel worsened, Father Daniel J. Power, S.J. Society of Jesus, head of development at Jesuit Georgetown University, called me and said, 'Deke, why don't you and Jim Rowley, Roman Catholic papal knight, whose brother was a powerful Jesuit priest, have a quiet lunch with me at my office at the university?' Rowley, chief of Secret Service, was a former FBI agent whom I knew and liked, and we both accepted." It was the first of a number of such luncheons. Following each, I wrote a memorandum to J. Edgar Hoover with the increasing conviction that Rowley wished to cooperate rather than, as Hoover suspected, make the FBI's scapegoat for his own agency's shortcomings. Eventually, we worked out a number of administrative procedures that strengthened the relationship between the Secret Service and the FBI and ensure greater protection for the President and his family. Today, it is far less likely that CIA agent Lee Harvey Oswald could slip through on that when there was no protection in Dallas the day that JFK was murdered. This reconciliation was all the more essential because the new president, Lyndon B. Johnson, issued an executive order allowing the president to use the FBI for protection as well as the Secret Service, furthering a national police state. Had Rowley and I not worked out our difficulties, such efforts would have been difficult at best. Dear Truth Seeker, this well-hidden incident deliberately shrouded in secrecy for decades is a prime example of the Jesuit unseen hand in Washington. To be able to calm the storm between the empire's two most powerful police agencies reveals who truly maintains order, who rules in a 14th Amendment America. The result of these meetings between Knight of Malta Carter the Loge and Knight of Malta Jim Rowley at the feet of their master Daniel Powell the Jesuit was the further centralization of presidential power in Washington. Hoover's bureaucratic bastard, the Holy Office of Inquisition in America, moved another step closer to becoming the empire's Nazi fascist Gestapo. President Johnson, the Freemason, gave Cardinal Spellman his extirpation of heretics in Vietnam, over 3 million Buddhists. And CIA Director John A. McCone, the Knight of Malta, gave the Jesuits General Secret Team its international drug trade. That massive drug trade would greatly accelerate the weakening of destruction of the white Celtic Anglo-Saxon peoples, coupled with forced integration, amalgamation, imported black-on-white crime, the mass marketing of corrupted pro-Latin Vulgate Bibles, and gun confiscation. They have founded the great and mighty Protestant nations of Western civilization, who, being the risen Son of God's most devoted Bible-believing preachers and missionaries in the history of the true blood-bought Church of the Lord Jesus Christ. Is this not a fact, a righteous judgment of the Lord against the predominantly atheistic and a more Bible-rejecting white race of both the British and American empires for harboring, protecting, and financing that calculated, cold-blooded viper, the Company of Jesus, as it pursues its hell-bent quest in destroying the Protestant Reformation? The unrestrained and unpunished drug trade, coupled with the loss of Hong Kong, will provide the economic base for building that military Goliath in the Far East, our future invader and destroyer, the relentless mass-murdering Red Chinese Army, and the purpose destruction of the Muslim mosques, Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem, to be secretly carried out by the Black Pope's international intelligence community overseeing the Masonic leadership of all Islamic nations and the Masonic leadership of Labour Zionist Israel, will fire the hearts of yet another one of our future invaders, the Muslim world. Having survived Rome's present U.S. crusade against Islam, the papal Caesar will then make Jerusalem an international city under the protection of his revived Holy Roman Pan-European Empire. The courageous ex-Jesuit Alberto Rivera, who gained the secret knowledge of Vatican intelligence through the instruction of one of the Black Pope's most powerful Jesuits and confessor to Pope Pius XII, Augustine Cardinal B, correctly declared, Jerusalem will fall into the hands of the Pope, and the Muslim nations via Shrine of Freemasonry will assist him. The last Pope will be the Antichrist. Who knows? He must flee to Jerusalem to escape from the Vatican just before it is destroyed, Revelation 17:16. That secret team in command of the coming Red Chinese invasion of the Empire's west coast and a united Muslim invasion of the Empire's southeast coast is the Borg of Star Trek, the militia of the Black Pope directing the Papal Caesar, the company of Ignatius Loyola, respectively known as the Society of Jesus, or as the French reformer John Calvin surnamed these brainwashed, mind-controlled religious fanatics and forever warring mass murderers of both the risen Son of God's Bible-believing church and his Semitic Hebrew/Jewish nation of Israel, yet to repent and inherit a national blessing under the Messiah's Abrahamic covenant. They are the Jesuits. So right here we have Secret Service agents Clint Hill, Roy Kellerman, William Greer, Cardinal Spellman's SSA assassins of President Kennedy in 1964. Rendered untouchable by Cardinal Spellman's LBJ appointed Secret Warren Commission directed by 33rd degree Freemasons, Alan W. Dulles, John J. McCloy, Earl Warren, and Gerald R. Ford. National press rule by CFR members Skull and Bones / Knight of Malta Henry R. Lucy, CIA directed by Knight of Malta John A. McCone, FBI directed by 33rd degree Freemason J. Edgar Hoover and his assistant Knight of Malta Cartha DeLoach, Secret Service directed by Knight of Malta James J. Rowley, whose brother Francis Rowley was a Jesuit priest. Secret Service agent Clint Hill, Roy Kellerman, and William Greer spent the rest of their unrepentant wicked lives in silence as to what really happened in Dallas on November 22, 1963. Greer was one of the oldest members of the Secret Service White House detail located in the West Wing, he having served as a limousine driver for past Presidents Truman and Eisenhower. And since Knight Rowley had been agent in charge of White House detail since 1946, he must have chosen his old friend Greer, the apostate Protestant and hater of JFK, to shoot the president with a special CIA-created exploding round to the head. Rowley officially stated several times that no Secret Service fired his weapon on the day of JFK's murder, which claim could have been verified had not he ordered his agents to immediately seize and send Governor Connolly's clothes to the cleaners, thus removing all traces of powder emitted from Greer's handgun. Kellerman had coached Greer as to when to shoot Hill, anticipating the final shots from the follow-up vehicle, mounted the presidential limousine, and kept Jackie in check. All three never knew they had murdered Ford, the Black Pope. Right here you have Knight of Malta, Cartha DeLoach. Conspirators, Masonic President Lyndon Johnson, and FBI Assistant Director Knight of Malta, Cartha DeLoach, the White House in 1964. DeLoach was the liaison between Hoover's FBI, the CIA, and the White House. Both he and Hoover opposed the establishment of the Warren Commission. DeLoach was also the liaison between the FBI and the Warren Commission via 33rd degree Freemason Gerald R. Ford, suppressing facts evidencing a CIA/FBI conspiracy. Right here you have FBI Assistant Director Cartha DeLoach, General Ramsey Clark, 1970s. Clark attempted to protect CIA assets David Ferry and Clay Shaw from Jim Garrison's investigation. DeLoach participated in providing that protection. SMOM, Cartha DeLoach, Congressman Newt Gingrich in the 80s. With DeLoach, back in SAOM's Republican New Right, neo-fascist pro-Vatican movement launched by Presidents Reagan and CFR/Bush 81 to 93, Bohemian Grover Gingrich continued the conservative movement via his contract with America during CFR/Clinton's pro-red Chinese years 93 to 2001, resulting in the election of President Bush and his war on terror. We have Knight of Malta James Joseph Rowley from 1908 to 92, 1950s Agent Federal Bureau of Investigation 36 to 38, Agent Secret Service 38 to 1961, Director 1961 to 73, Roman Catholic Secret Service Director James J. Rowley 1964. Born in Bronx, New York to Irish Roman Catholic immigrants, James grew up on Fordham Road near the company's Fordham University. Educated by Dominicans at Our Savior's School, James graduated from a public high school working for the state banking department until he entered the FBI. His brother Francis went to work for the Federal Reserve Bank and later became a powerful Jesuit priest, serving a liaison between Rowley's Secret Service and the Jesuits at Fordham and Georgetown universities. Entering the Secret Service in 1938, Rowley was assigned to the White House. In 1939, his office in the West Wing, involved in the advanced secured work of FDR's every conference, beginning with Casablanca. Rowley was given charge of the White House detail in 1946, the protection of the president now completely in the hands of the Black Pope. Our Jesuit coadjutor prospered during the Truman and Eisenhower eras, William Greer serving as Rowley's presidential limousine driver, overseeing all advanced security details wherever the president would visit, working with local police, sheriff departments. On the day of JFK's murder, Rowley used Forrest Sorrell's SS chief in Dallas to plot with local police, change the parade route onto Elm Street, shoot JFK via SSA Greer, coached by SSA Kellerman, kidnap the president's body, refusing a Texas autopsy in violation of state law, and ensure the limousine was sanitized, removing all evidence of multiple gunshots. Jesuit Francis J. Rowley. Jesuit priest Francis Rowley was a younger brother of James J. Rowley, the head of the Black Pope's American Secret Service, which oversaw the security of President Kennedy. As in the case of many families, foreign and domestic, there has been a Knight of Malta occupying paramount office of power within the federal government, whose brother was by mere coincidence a Jesuit priest. One such current example is CFR member and Knight of Malta Alexander M. Haig Jr., whose brother Francis Haig is a highly influential Jesuit priest. Though there be many more identical examples, these dynamic duos are carefully hidden from public view, lest we awake to the peril of the Pope's ever-increasing political/temporal power over the affairs of all nations. Jesuit Daniel J. Power. Jesuit Daniel J. Power was the head of development at Jesuit Georgetown University, the real capital in Washington, overseeing the White House, the Congress, and Supreme Court via its Council on Foreign Relations. Keys to the order's absolute power are the various alphabet federal police agencies and a mutual cooperation at the top. Fully secure in 1963, the assassination was used by the order to extend the inquisitional power of its FBI to include presidential protection in conjunction with the Secret Service. No president would ever again be allowed to wield the constitutionally limited power of a genuine U.S. president. This was realized through a series of meetings between Hoover's FBI Assistant Director Spellman's Roman Catholic Knight of Malta Cartha DeLoach and the Director of the Secret Service Spellman's Roman Catholic Knight of Malta James J. Rowley, whose brother was a Jesuit priest. Hosting the meeting was Jesuit Daniel J. Power, who was beholden to his master, Georgetown University President Jesuit Edward B. Dunn, 1952-64. Upon completion of the meetings, the new arrangements agreed to were imposed upon the American people without, on knowledge or consent, Jesuit temporal coadjutor, Georgetown University trained Texas Freemason, and co-conspirator in the Kennedy assassination. President Lyndon B. Johnson issued an executive order giving the FBI and Secret Service more absolute power in their quest of mutually protecting or eliminating every president of Jesuit/CFR making.